Hello, welcome to SuperReturn Asia 2019. I'm Sarah Clark, coming to you from Hong Kong, and I'm joined by Jeff Harbach, who's the CEO of Kauffman Fellows. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
The topic of conversation I'd like to have with you today is looking at standing out from the crowd, enhancing company portfolio performances. What is the key to boosting investor returns and portfolio returns?
Yeah, well, so at Kauffman Fellows, we really believe that it's important for us to recognize that the hero in our story is the entrepreneur. We don't want to lose sight of that. As investors, we want to remember that they're the ones that are driving returns, they're the ones that are building the companies that are going to change the landscape of tomorrow. Noam Wasserman, who's a very well-known HBS professor, and he wrote a book called The Founder's Dilemma, where he said that 65% of businesses fail because of the human dynamic. We think he's actually sandbagging there. We think it's actually more than that. And so our job as investors, the way we can help in boosting returns, is to help the founders understand that that is a real thing, that the human dynamic part of the business is so critical. When you're at a startup, you're focusing on product market fit. To be a scale-up, you have to focus on a lot more things besides just product market fit. And scale-ups are where returns come from for investors. So we have to help them help them focus on things like company culture, board composition, board meetings, all these other avenues that entrepreneurs don't have any training in. So to boost returns, we really need to focus on the human dynamic, and that's where we focus our time.
And we can take from that, looking at the human element, to networking. Kauffman Fellows says you put a value on networking and the data. How does that work? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I don't love the term networking. It's more the value of the network. Our network is the largest and most connected network of VCs in the world. So at Kauffman Fellows, we're about 650 fellows that are investors at around 50 different countries. When you add in our mentors and other faculty, we're over 1,000 different individuals. And we put a value on that network because we believe that networks help to accelerate your learning and your growth beyond the rate of your own experience. Data speaking, or numbers speaking, the way that we value this is we've built one of the largest proprietary data sets in the world that focuses on venture outcomes. And in venture outcomes, we look at industry realized multiples, and we look at average realized multiples, and we see where the numbers go based on the strength of your network. And so we know, in an industry perspective, the average realized multiple in the industry for VC is around 2 to 3x, depending on some of the measurements that you're looking at. Now, nobody in this conference or in VC is looking for a 2 to 3x return. We're all looking for 10x plus returns. That's why we're in venture, otherwise we wouldn't be in this business. And so what are the things that drive those returns? Well, we know that the power of networks is a very strong indicator of returns in the business. In fact, we've now put a value to it that if you're in a top 10% network, the average realized multiple in the top 10% network is over 6x. The average realized multiple in the top 1% network is over 10x. And we've really measured these networks not just on weak social data, but rather on how many times people work together, kind of what we define as their betweenness, which my data scientists would be able to tell you a lot more about. But I think the power of networks really relates to average realized multiple in the business.
So is it a scenario of who you know, the relationship element of the financial success? Is that something as well that you think is, you can put a value on that?
I think yes, but I think the value that you put on it is the value that you give to the relationship and also derive from the relationship. So again, when we talk about this with investors, it's all about giving, receiving in that relationship to accelerate each other's learning and growth. Too often we have, in our business, we have very surface level, superficial conversations and never go to the really deep stuff that helps us become better at what we do. And that translates to how we then relate to and communicate with our entrepreneurs. So I think the value is measured more in the depth of the relationship and how each other can help to accelerate our learning and our growth more than anything else, more than networking.
So looking at the investor side, the best investors in the world, what do they do and how do you prepare investors? We talked earlier about behavioral fitness.
Yeah, we have a very strong opinion on this. We think the best investors in the world do 4 things really well. Number one is we believe they have radical self-belief and a willingness to bet on themselves. So they invest because of conviction, not because of consensus or what's going on in the world. We use this methodology in the program that you and I talked about called the 4 zones of human operation, where if you imagine a pyramid with the top zone being your zone of genius, next being your zone of excellence, next being your zone of competence, and next being your zone of incompetence. Now obviously we don't want to spend any of our time in a zone of incompetence, the things we're not very good at. But way too many of us spend too much time in our zone of competence or excellence and not nearly enough time in our zone of genius. frankly, many of us, you and I, most of us don't even know what our zone of genius is, or frankly believe that we have one. But the best investors in the world, the ones that are doing this very, very well, the ones that are realizing those 10x returns on a regular basis, they know exactly what their zone of genius is, and they spend the most amount of their time there. So that's number one. Number two is we believe the best investors in the world have a novel investment thesis that maps back to their zone of genius. So it's all about understanding what you're going to invest in and why, not just following the crowd. Number three is we believe the best investors in the world have a strong personal brand. Now we define the personal brand much differently than the world does. The world might say your personal brand is how many Twitter followers you have. We define personal brand as the promise of the experience. What is the experience that I as an entrepreneur have with you as an investor? Because the reality is your personal brand is being built every single day by every single interaction you have, whether you like it or not. One of our fellows said in any given year you're going to have 1,000 to 1,500 interactions, and 3 of those interactions are going to change your life, but you have no idea which 3. So how you show up to every single interaction, that's your personal brand. And then the fourth piece is the fact that after 24 years in this business doing what we do, we recognize that success is pegged not solely to the technical dynamics, but rather the human dynamics, as we talked about. So it's about how you show up, how you present yourself, how you show up to board meetings, how you support that entrepreneur. I mean, when you show up to a board meeting and the entrepreneur or the founder is sitting at the head of the table, the CEO is sitting at the head of the table, and you sit down and you kind of slump in your chair, she's sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, the board member's mad, or they're grumpy today, or they're upset that I didn't send my board deck on time, when in reality you might just be comfortable, or I don't know, maybe you're cold. But sitting up, those subtle nuances of how we present ourselves in a board meeting can really impact the return, ultimately the success of that entrepreneur and the returns for the investor.
Jeff Harbach, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for joining us at SuperReturn Asia in Hong Kong. If you'd like to see more conversations like this, you can follow us on Twitter. Look for #SRAsia. See you next time.